India's trade deficit widened sharply by 141% in October 2025 to $21.8 billion, driven by a combination of shrinking exports and swelling imports, especially in merchandise trade. The trade deficit represents the gap between imports and exports, and in October both sides worsened. Total exports fell 0.7% to $72.9 billion due to an 11.8% contraction in merchandise exports, while services exports grew 11.9%, partly cushioning the fall. Over April to October 2025, however, India's export performance remained strong, with overall exports rising 4.8%, supported heavily by services. One major headwind has been the 50% tariffs imposed by the US, which affect only merchandise exports. India's merchandise exports to the US dropped 20.4% in September 2025, the first full month of tariff application, and although October saw a 15.4% month-on-month rebound helped by Indian exporters offering discounts and diversifying within the US, exports still remained 8.6% lower year-on-year. Labor-intensive sectors such as leather, gems and jewelry, chemicals, engineering goods, yarn and jute were hit hardest, as the US is a major buyer for these categories. On the import side, total imports rose nearly 15% to $94.7 billion, driven overwhelmingly by merchandise imports, which surged 16.7%. The single biggest factor was an extraordinary spike in gold imports, which rose nearly 200% to $14.7 billion due to the festive season falling entirely in October. India's cultural affinity for buying gold during Dhanteras and Deepavali led to unusually high demand. Silver imports also grew by 530%, though from a much smaller base. Interestingly, gold imports had been declining earlier in the year despite higher prices, but October's spike reversed the trend, making April to October gold imports 21.4% higher than last year. This surge is unlikely to persist, though elevated gold purchases may continue as investors hedge against currency risks. On the export front, pressures may ease if India and the US conclude the first tranche of their bilateral trade agreement, as recent negotiations show improving sentiment. Overall, while October appears to be an exceptional month due to tariffs and festival-linked imports, structural strengths in services exports and easing trade tensions could support export recovery. Exim Bank forecasts India's merchandise exports to reach $114.2 billion in the October to December 2025 quarter, a 5% year-on-year growth.